Okay, good morning, colleagues in Brazil. Good afternoon for colleagues in Africa and also in Europe. And good evening for colleagues in Asia. I'm very happy that we have the roundtable today. And thank you for colleagues who are joining us here on this virtual roundtable. And for those who join us online using a different platform. At the roundtable we are going to have this morning this about global research funding. And I'm happy to have colleagues from Brazil, from Germany, and from India, and myself from Botswana. My name is Gabriel Faimau. I'm based here in the University of Botswana, in Botswana. I'm also a SMUS lead partner and also an action speaker. We have a colleague from Brazil, Maria do Carmo Martins Sobral from Brazil Germany Network of Higher Education Internationalization, Federal University of Pernambuco. We have my colleague here, Johanna from the University of Freiburg, and Fraya Frehse. He is also a SMUS lead partner and action speaker from the Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee in India. What we are going to have in the roundtable, this will be a conversation about global research funding. So as I said, this will be a conversation. So there will be no formal PowerPoint presentation, but we'll have the session as a conversation from colleagues from different universities or higher education institution around the globe. What I'm going to do, I will moderate the roundtable by providing some sort of leading questions that will help us to have the conversation around the issue of global research funding. But before I do that, I will invite my colleagues to briefly introduce themselves and also their institution before we start discussing about the issue of global research funding. Let me start from Brazil. Maria, please.
Yes, I am from Northeast Brazil, from the Federal University of Brazil, and I have made a short presentation, some slide. I don't know if I can show now. Do you think or later, as you want? Yes, and now, as you said, we have this net to the Rebralint that's to support the internationalization of the institution. So we work especially with German, yes, Brazil and German, and I am the vice president of this institution.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want that I make my slide, or do you think it will be better later?
I'll give you time right after this. I'll give you time.
Yes, that's better. Okay.
Thanks. Johanna, please.
I'm Johanna. I'm a professor of Islamic Studies at the Albert Ludwigs Universität Freiburg. It's a public university in Germany.
Thank you. Gaurav?
Yes, hello, very good evening from India. I am a professor and head of architecture and planning at the Indian Institute of Technology. And this is a 175-year-old institution of India set up by the British in 1847. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, since Maria, you have prepared a presentation, I would suggest that you go ahead with the presentation first.
Yes, that's I am a civil engineer, but I work more with environment issues, management issues, and I have made my post-graduation in Canada and in Germany. So can you go? Yes, and most of the research in Brazil are being made at the academic institution and more in the public institution. So now we have 4,500 graduate students, course divided between master, PhD. We have also academic and professional master, and you have begin also to make PhD, professional PhD, and a number of 300,000 students. Yeah, they are in this graduation program. The two important institutions for funds in Brazil, one is CAPES, yes, the coordination, and the coordination to provide support for the master and PhD program, yes, for the public school, yes, and also to give scholarship for the student and to promote the international cooperation. Yes, and I just show very quick some experience here that I have. This a Sobral, for example, but the CAPES work a lot with the AD. Our colleague Johanna will talk more about the German, but that's an example of Sobral, that the idea, you can go. The idea that provide for 2 years and you can renew, and you got a scholarship for graduate and postgraduate student, and you also short time for the professor and some money for the consumption. So it's a very successful project that you have been on for more than 10 years, and you have call, yeah, usually once or twice a year. You can go, Simone. And that's also a program with CAPES by Braftec, that's French, and with the same instructor to give it. You can go to provide scholarship, yes, and in this program we give the possibility of to have double diploma, that when the student stay 2 years in the undergraduate level, they get the scholarship, and they can get both the Brazilian and the French diploma. The other important institutions that CNPq, yes, that the CAPES is subordinated by Education Ministry, and CNPq is subordinated by Ministry of Science and Technology and Information. CNPq provides also lots of calls, and the scholarship for the master, for the PhD student, and also scholarship for the professor, né? For the that support the Brazilian research. You can go. Yeah, you can go. It's just to show, go ahead. Some project that you do also that to project together, yes, with CNPq with ministry. This, for example, it's about the management of the research and with climate change. Go. That's just you want to show that you are working a lot with these sustainable development goals. Yes, and this, for example, is trying to work more with this coastal zone and energy safety, because you increase this renewable energy and how you can monitor water quality to mitigate this impact of climate change. Can go. Yes, that the line of this call. Can go ahead. Just to give an example, other important fund structure that most of the important state, they have a state foundation. For example, São Paulo is FAPESP, here in Pernambuco is FACEP, and they give also scholarship, they provide also money for research at the state level. So we decide which are the priority subject that the state would like to work. Go ahead. And this foundation, they have built a confederation of the CONFAP, that is a confederation of this state. So when they are together, you can also go to international calls, because you can bring 2 or 3 states, each institution will give some money, and we can you will be strong to try international calls. Yes, for example, here with the Newton Foundation, also the European Community, yes, and this also Captains PK, they are together. Go ahead. And so that's, for example, that an open call that you have now is a confederation between Brazil and Spain, yes, and more related to technological innovation for industry and commercial potential. Go ahead, por favor, Simone. The other one is this Horizon Europe. Yes, that the more with climate change. For example, Recife is the worst city in Brazil, the most dangerous that with the climate impact. So you are working a lot in this subject. Well, and with the other one is a water 4A, that's also a hydroclimate event. And the idea when the CONFAP comes that you bring together different institutions from Pernambuco, from São Paulo, from different regions. So you can see the reality, the problematic of the different. Brazil is very big, it's almost a continent, you can see it. Go ahead. So that's this one, for example, it's still open, São Paulo Global Start. Go ahead. Yes, and this, they bring this call, we bring together 4 different countries. So that's something that you can think about eyes. For example, with India, we have the BRICS. So you can think about project that you can bring together these different countries, or with German, or the Botswana. So basically, that's what I want, very short. And I give you to you again, Gabriel.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Maria. I think you have addressed a number of questions that I would like to ask, and I believe let me get to the questions, and we'll definitely engage in including some points that you have raised. The first question I would like to ask, I would like us to talk about the availability of research funding within our institutions or within our countries, and the type of priority areas in terms of research funding, if there is any. So the first one that is about, the availability of research funding within our institutions and also within our countries, and also whether there are any priority areas when it comes to research funding. So I think, can I start with Johanna, please?
Okay. Just very briefly. So usually, I mean, research in Germany is like the very largest part of it is done in public institutions, like public universities, and also some publicly funded research centers. Since compared to large parts of what we could call the global south or the majority world, research funding is relatively generous. So I know people, especially in the humanities and social sciences, who actually never make any attempt to get any additional funding. They just do their research with the staff and the funding they have. But this is becoming increasingly difficult because even in Germany, we have funding cuts, we have tightening budgets. We also have increasing expectations of professors at universities to acquire third-party funding. And third-party funding can be acquired from different parties, depending on your discipline and on your field of research. It could be industry partners like pharma companies, engineering companies, etc. Especially for the social sciences and the humanities, it is mostly, again, public funding, for example, by the German Research Foundation, or by the European Union, which has become a very big source of funding in Europe. So here you can apply both with individual projects and with large collaborative projects. Then another thing that is really shaping the German context is the so-called Initiative of Excellence. This was started in 2005. And I think the idea behind it was that so German universities, they all were more or less on the same level. They received more or less the same public funding. And maybe you could say, okay, this university is a bit better in medicine and the other university is a bit better in, I don't know, the economy or something. But more or less, we didn't really have any Ivy League or anything. We still don't have it. But I think the idea on part of the government was to change this, to have some like really outstanding, excellent, internationally attractive universities. And so they introduced this initiative. And since then, every 7 years, all the German universities can compete for funding. And it's really a lot of funding. So many universities, they have growing numbers of students. They don't have a growing budget, so they have increasing financial problems, and they are really eager for this money. So in the end, we spend a lot of our time competing for these different kinds of funding and also in the initiative of excellence. So limitations, I would say limitations are especially visible if you are engaged in international cooperation, which is also the topic of this panel. So I'm in Islamic studies, so it's Islamic and Middle Eastern studies, so it's relatively natural for me to look for funding that would enable me to collaborate with international partners. I'm also currently involved in a big project where we are trying to get funding for research on coloniality, both in Europe and in other parts of the world, from the perspective of different disciplines. And what we see here is that with a lot of funding opportunities, it's not really possible to spend the money on international partners. So it has to be spent within the German context, which makes it very hard to collaborate with international partners because they want to have something out of this as well. And those programs that enable us to spend money in international institutions with international partners also very often suffer from fundamental problems. So we have the German Academic Exchange Service, which funds different types of programs and projects. We have the Humboldt Foundation, which mostly funds individual awards, fellowships, professors, and so on. And we also have the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, which has some priority programs, and these are usually in fields that are currently considered politically relevant. The same is true for the European Union. They also have these programs. So at the moment, this is obviously climate change, epidemiology, etc. So this is, on the one hand, it's understandable. On the other hand, it also creates problems because it can come and go with the fashion. And then sometimes you spend a lot of time, money, and effort on building up something, and suddenly the topic goes out of fashion and you don't get any funding, and all these people are without job. The international collaboration falls apart. So one of the problems really with all these things, including the German Academic Exchange Service, it's that it's always a very limited amount of time. So maybe you get money for 3 years, then maybe you can work for 1 year and then you already start preparing the next application to get another round of money. And you never know if it will succeed. So you also have a lot of people on short-term contracts. It makes it very hard for international partners to do any planning. It makes the whole collaboration very unreliable. There are also problems. I mean, with many programs, you have unequal funding. So for example, I had an exchange program with Tunisia. And it was really embarrassing because the Germans who went to Tunisia got so much more money than the Tunisians who came to Germany, even though Germany is far more expensive than Tunisia. So we had to put all these Tunisian peoples in youth hostels, etc. And all the Germans were staying like in 4-star hotels. And yeah, it's nice for me, but it's not really good for like an equal international collaboration, which should be the desirable thing. But then very often you also are met with distrust on the part of the agencies who provide funding. So they seem to think that as soon as you give money to partners in, I don't know, Ghana or Brazil or whatever, they will do with it whatever. So they have to be policed, really. A lot of things are not approved. And very often it's also, for example, if you're working with the Middle East, you see that political goals trump academic goals. So at the moment, for example, the German Academic Research Foundation gives priority to programs that are somehow about strengthening civil society and, I don't know, improving democracy in the region. And on the one hand, this is, I mean, these are desirable goals and that's fantastic. But on the other hand, we are academics, so universities are maybe not fully equipped to actually build democracy in any country, you know. This is not really my role. It's also, in many cases, I also think it's problematic because it actually puts our partners at risk. Like, for example, in a country such as Tunisia, they are currently having a transformation towards a new dictatorship. And I'm very sorry for them, but I also, I can't say, I mean, I can't go and say I require them to work with civil society institutions, which would put them at risk, maybe politically. So I think this would be very irresponsible of me, and it's also very irresponsible of the donor. So personally, I would much prefer to prioritize academic goals over political goals, because also academic collaboration can be an important foundation for positive social and political developments, but in a more indirect way. And of course, in a way that's not really measurable. And this is another thing that, especially with the German Academic Exchange Service, they are more and more applying these measurable parameters, which are often really a farce. You know, you just end up making up all these outcome and whatever sheets, because, I mean, what measurable outcome do you actually have when you do substantial fundamental research? I mean, yeah. So it's very hard to actually put numbers to everything what you do, and it still could be very valuable in not measurable terms. Okay, so I'll leave it at that, and I think we can discuss more.
Thanks a lot. I think you have actually responded to the question I would like to ask. So let me invite Gaurav. Gaurav, if you can also talk about the funding areas, but touch on the international collaboration as well, like what Johanna has raised.
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel, and thank you, Maria and Johanna, for kickstarting this whole discussion. And what makes me smile is that that the issues in every land seems to be somewhere universal. While we always feel that I am Indian, you're Brazilian, or you're Botswanan, but I find the research as a common goal for all academics or all futurists of this world are always at this crossroad of where to seek the right kind of funding